Hi, croeso pawb, bore da. Hello, Marco Dwi. It's Marco here. So I'm Marco Gil Cervantes. I'm the chair of the Youth Information Entitlement Offer and Digital IPG. So this is just the program, so you get an idea what we're doing. So we're talking initially about the digital revolution that we've been probably living in for the last 20 plus years, and it's continuing, so just a bit of background there, and then a little bit more on the three areas we deal with, which is the information, digital, and an entitlement offer. And I'll talk a bit more about that. Then we're going to go into some best practice presentations, so you've got a sense of the different practices taking place, and it's quite varied. And then there's a Q&A, short Q&A with panel members for you to ask questions. But again, any further questions can be asked and we can deal with them later. There will be a break then for you to do whatever you feel you need to do. So you can take a breather. And then we're going to get the important part is the feedback from yourselves. There's some breakout rooms and then feedback from those rooms. And so really, we're interested in what you have, what you think. I think it's like, what does it look, what are the visions for the future of this? Because we're looking at towards implementation. So what do the visions of these three areas look like? The next slide, please. So just to remind you that this is the Implementation Partnership Group. And the key word in this is implementation. We're here to implement the recommendations or to push for the implementation of those recommendations that came from the interim board recommendations that were met for over 3 years, involved the sector, and we all inputted into these recommendations and agreed with them. So that's the stage we are, is implementing. It's an exciting stage, but it's a hard stage. So working with Welsh Government, with the Minister, etc., to be able to implement a lot of these recommendations. Next slide, please. Again, so it's three areas: information, digital, and the entitlement offer. They interlink each other. You can imagine, a lot of information will be created through digital means, and the entitlement offer can link us to can link some of these areas together, but they have their own separate areas of action, really. So next, please. And so digital transformation, it's odd now, because I think digital transformation is now is something that has happened, a lot of it's happened, but not everywhere. I wanted to show you this because this folder is what used to be, well, the service directory for organizations working with young people in Cardiff. This is probably about 20 years old, and it was a folder with 100 bits of paper in it with all the organizations involved and the tabs on the side that explained. And this was actually printed and sent around every organization who's working with young people would have this folder, and it would be delivered to their door and as a source of information. So that's how information was passed around. It was delivered by hand, and if someone needed information, they went through this folder. Difficulties is that this may come out and the next day or a week later, the telephone numbers may have changed, and it was out of date rather quickly, but it cost a lot of money to do. So it would be printed, if you were lucky, every 6 months or so. And this was posted around. So as digital came along, this was we worked this was developed into a web presence, which is a Sprout, which still works today as a national. And that did a couple of things. Number one, all that information was online digitally. If a telephone number changed, you could change it straight away. And the other thing is allowed the whole new digital web, etc., allowed for young voices to be heard on the website. So it did a couple of things. It allowed participation, and it was used as a model across Europe, really. It was being used in right across. So next slide, please. So digital revolution, I always think about if you look up how we ourselves use digital in terms of booking your holidays, maybe taxis, food, delivery, banking, how many transactions do you do in banking by going to the bank, your car tax, etc. So if you I'd like you to keep that in mind, of the things that we do day in, day out that digital. I mean, I can't see all your hands, but if you don't use any of these digital products in any way, put your hand up. And I can't imagine anyone doing it because we're on a digital platform now. So digital is not just for Christmas or for the pandemic. It's for life. It's been there for a while. I think the pandemic pushed us forward 10 years within 3 years. A simple example, now we're on a webinar. It's done by, created by Digital Products using a different way of thinking and working. It's not something we used to do regularly pre-pandemic. So the pandemic has moved us into this situation, and we're all naturally happy to do this. We don't have to travel so much, etc. So it opens up for a lot of people. So digital is expected. It's not special. It's just normalized. Another point is that often just the realization that it's not a competition between digital and face-to-face. It's how these two things interact. I put down youth cultures because really the predominant, young people have often lived in the digital cultures and use digital all the time. The important thing about digital, I think, is the democratization of voice, because now you have access to channels, you have access to media, you have access to mass media. That wasn't something of the past, so it allows that voice to go further. And the other thing that digital does is helps us create more wider reaching services, because we can access a whole wider range of people. They're not always expected to come to us. Next slide, please. So these are 3 areas I'd just like you to think about in terms of consumption, production, and critical thinking. So there's the consumption of digital in one way or another. And that's often seen as a sort of, we have to consume things, we have to find things out, but it tends to have a slight passive connotation to it. We consume things passively. And then there's the production of digital or product, using products, etc., that is much more of an active role that we also would encourage young people to be part of an understanding, as in content creators, etc., so they understand those processes and are able to have a voice. And the other thing is the critical thinking. So if we or young people aren't encouraged to have the critical thinking about what we consume, why we're consuming, what we produce, how we produce, that's kind of an important part of the process, that critical thinking. The next slide, please. Why we're here. Okay, well, we're all here, hopefully, to develop further understanding of these areas, but also crucially, we want, as the IPG, and we want your support and your thoughts. And the one I put in there is cross-sector support, because as a youth work sector, we work with young people and a lot of other areas of government and services need to work with young people. And I know they often find it very difficult to access and communicate with the young people. And I think that's what youth work is really, really good at. So we want to make sure that that the other sectors understand how much we can do to support those sectors. Next slide. Okay, so we're developing understanding the youth work sector. So there are skills and training. So both for young people, but for the workers themselves, we need to have a better understanding what digital tools could we use. But as well as the tools, there is a lot of digital now is starting to think in terms of the processes, agile thinking, designing services, which is a digital way of thinking, which actually places the young person or the user at the core of that. And that's that's a big move in public services generally. We need to think about leadership, the leadership of the youth work services, and so they understand digital and make it part of going forward. And again, I've talked about young person led and user led services need to work this way, which as youth workers we will completely understand, because participation is at the core of what we do. And then there's the link with the other IPGs. I mean, the training one is obvious one. There's workforce development. The workforce need to develop the skills to be able to partake in this area. So next slide. So just quickly, so if you think about services and the services we have, many of these services were designed, weren't designed with digital in mind. So And so we have a kind of there's a bit of a legacy there, and sometimes things take a little bit longer to change. So next slide, please. So the question is if we were to start today and we were going to design services today, what would they look like? Would they look the same? Would we move quicker into connecting up digital possibilities or not, maybe? So it's just something to think through. Next slide, please. There's a short poll here that I'm going to ask you to go through to make you a bit active in the process and think about some of these areas. So please, you'll see the poll on your screens. Please fill these questions. It's just give a sense of where the room is, etc. So if you could do that, I can see your answers coming in already. We'll only be open for a little bit of time. You can see there's some questions here are leading questions and some are not. But I wanted you to be actually active in the process and not sort of just listen to us. Yep. So I'll leave it for, we've got 71% participation so far. I'll probably stop soon. We're reaching 80, as soon as I reach 80, 85. Okay, so Andrew, I'll just take off the screen and read the results off the screen. Is that the best?
Yeah, hopefully everybody's got the results on their screen now.
Oh, they can see themselves. Okay. So obviously, do you use digital in personal life? Everybody does. That's how pervasive digital is. So that's what I'm trying to move it on to the idea that we're doing something different. We're not. We're doing things that is part of our lives. We do it day in, day out. And so I'm trying to get us to think in terms of how can we develop, some of those great services that we use. We think, oh, wasn't that great? That's made our lives a lot easier. How can we use that thinking in youth work? How can we make the lives easier for young people by using this thinking? Next question was, how confident you feel in providing information? So that's, let me just lift it up. Okay, I've got 5 is high. Is it 5 is the top end? So it's quite high. Everybody's 3 and above, more or less. So there's a third is on 3. So there's some growth there. And some people at 25% feel pretty confident. That's good to see. And then we've got another question there. How confident do you feel using digital tools? Quite similar to the one above. Slightly lower. Okay. And then the last question, are you aware one entitlement card should be? There's a yes, there's quite a high not sure, and a no, a couple of no's. Importantly, I ask this because we don't have an entitlement card offer in Wales, so it's hard to understand when we've never had one in Wales to understand what that is. But we'll go through that. Okay, next, please. Okay, so I'm going to start on the information section. So information, and I've added the ideas of voice and participation, because I don't think information is a one-way process. Information is what young people think, as well as the information from authorities. And I'm going to highlight ERICA. So ERICA is the European Youth Information and Counselling Agency that provides trainings, reports, collaborative projects, etc. And there's about 30 countries and members of ERICA, and one of those countries is Wales, and Welsh Government is the member for the sector. So they have a lot of access to information and a way for us to kind of develop using their expertise. Next slide. So youth information and counselling aims to uphold the right of young people to full and reliable information that helps them to make informed choices and promotes their autonomy, their ability to think critically, and their active participation in society. And it's always seen as a kind of integral part of youth work offer. Next slide, please. And just to remind you, as part of this is UNCRC, United Nations Charter of Rights of the Child. Article 13 says every child must be free to express their thoughts and opinions and to access all kinds of information. Next slide.
What is youth information? Information is a powerful right, as it gives access to other rights. If we don't have information about our rights, how can we exercise them? Access to reliable information has become even more important in the digital era, where information overload is part of our everyday life. Education, employment, health, housing, mobility, getting involved. Having the right information at the right moment is key to becoming an autonomous and fulfilled citizen. And this is exactly what youth information and counselling is all about. Ensuring youth-friendly information for young people and with young people. This is Erica, the European Youth Information and Counselling Agency. Erica works to intensify international cooperation in the field of youth information and counselling. Our members represent all kinds of organisations providing these services, and they work at local, regional and national levels to ensure that young people get the information they need. We promote youth information service innovation by supporting youth information workers, capacity building activities and tools, research on youth trends and needs, youth policy development and advocacy. The European Youth Information Charter is a set of professional principles for youth information and counselling work. It ensures that youth information is independent, accessible, inclusive, needs-based, empowering, participative, ethical, professional, and proactive. It's a prerequisite to sign up to the Charter to become part of our network. Erica has members in most European countries. Our network is also open to organisations from outside of Europe. So what are the benefits of being an Erica member? Accessing and exchanging good practices, taking part in training and capacity building opportunities, partnering on a range of European projects and benefiting from their results, contributing to developing youth information in Europe in cooperation with peer professionals and experts, receiving support to innovate, establish and strengthen youth information services, contributing to policy-making processes at European level, and so much more. Thanks to the Erica Network, thousands of youth information professionals and volunteers all around Europe are better equipped to support young people's critical thinking and access to understandable and reliable information. You may have learned a bit more about youth information and Erica, but there's a lot more to discover. Get in touch with us to find out more.
Okay, so just to say on that that was Erica. So just a very brief, but remember that it talks about Europe, and we're not members of the EEC, but we are, Wales, Britain are members of the Council of Europe. So and that still looks after some youth elements and information. So the entitlement offer. So I'll explain quickly what an entitlement offer is. It's two things. It's often been thought of as the entitlement card that young people can access, or it can be on your mobile. And so there's a tool. It's a tool. The card or the mobile is a tool to ensure people have access to entitlements. It can be in the same as a student card, or it can provide that link to those entitlements. And then there's a question of what entitlements are available for young people and how could they be accessed to the card. So there's two elements. There's the tools and what entitlements. Next one. So you can see there's some examples of the cards there. There's bottom left is Young Scot card, which is close. They use the entitlement offer. It's very much part of what they do. And then there's a card above it is the Navarra, part of Spain, and there's a Turkish card on the left. And then you see the one on the right is the Communities of Madrid's card. And you can see the app on the phone and the card. Next one. And so the next slide, please. Yeah. So what does this entitlement offer? What could it do? Well, often it can be created so that it becomes a proof of age. So as a young person, you have a card that allows you for a proof of age, which is becoming increasingly more important because you can't vote without it. It's often used by carers to be able to collect medicines if needed, or to, importantly, I think, is to be able to open a bank account. If it's done in the right way, it can actually be used to open a bank account as it develops. It gets a bit more complicated, but so it can be a mechanism to deliver entitlements or a mechanism to provide information. Scotland uses a mechanism to provide transport for young people. And many countries, I know Holland use it for their cultural offers. So if they have a They want to encourage young people to partake in culture. They will use the cards to give them discounts, etc. Can be used for leisure. Some people use it as discounts for, they link it to the discounts, say, for leisure centres. So it can be at a national level, it can be at a local level. So I know some other organisations use it as to allow for training, to to publicise and allow access to training. And the European Youth Card is often linked to European Youth Card, European Youth Counselling, no, European Card Association, and they provide discounts across Europe. So, yeah, next slide. And digitally, so applying the culture technologies of the internet area to make our organizations more resilient and responsive to the changing expectation, needs and behaviors of young people we support. Next slide, please. So I just think this slide says the digital is now part of the youth work environment, and it can actually be effective in outreach, it can be effective in external activities and in youth clubs. And it also has the wider reach and being able to reach much further. It's almost like outreach plus, because you can go much further. It gives us a whole set of tools for youth work. Next slide. Yeah, so two things, tools and the processes. Always important to look at those two things, but they're not exactly the same. Okay, next slide. So I think it's a video.
Digital youth work means proactively using or addressing digital media and technology in youth work. Our role is to empower young people and their capacity to be active in a progressing digital society and increasing use of technologies. Digital youth work has the same goals and ethics as youth work in general. We should be using digital media and technology to support these goals. Digital youth work takes place in face-to-face situations and in online environments, or a combination of both. It is more than just online communication and activities with young people on social media. We can use digital media and technology either as a tool, an activity, or a content in youth work. Digital youth work is not a standalone youth work method. We can include it in any youth work setting, such as open and detached youth work, youth information and counselling, youth clubs, international youth work, and many more. What makes digital youth work so relevant? New technologies emerge rapidly and they are our reality. For example, AI-powered chatbots are already being developed in youth information and counselling services. Youth work has also started experimenting with virtual reality and augmented reality. Smart devices have enabled youth centres to be more flexible and independent of physical space. Knowing how technology is built, being curious, as well as critical towards new technologies, are now important in our everyday. Digital literacy and 21st century skills play a crucial role for modern-day citizenship, pathways to employment and life in general. It is essential for young people to develop technological skills and an agile mindset towards technology for their future work and everyday life. And through digital youth work, we can encourage this. Young people spend an increasing amount of their time consuming digital media and technology through gaming, messaging, blogs and video streaming. We can support young people to learn, to share their experiences, to exchange their views, to have fun with their friends, and to actively participate in society. The term digital native falsely suggests that young people intuitively know how to use digital technologies. Evidence shows that a high number of young people lack basic ICT skills, in addition to the challenge of digital divide, where young people with fewer opportunities face reduced access to the internet and social media. Youth work has always swiftly and boldly addressed new cultural phenomena and trends in youth culture. In many cases, it has also harnessed opportunities of new media and technology soon after their emergence. So, how can you make a start with digital youth work? Dive into exploring the vast resources available for digital youth work. Invest in developing your competences for digital youth work. Encourage the culture of innovation and agile mindset in your organisation.
Next, please. Okay, so now we're going over to some of the examples. Welcome, Nia.
Bore da. Nia Owen, dwi'n gweithio'r ieuenctid i gwasanaeth ieuenctid Cyngor Gwynedd. A dwi jyst yn mynd i rhannu profiad ni y stori lle da ni fel gwasanaeth wedi bod yn dysgu a datblygu ein sgiliau. Felly, un o'r peth gyntaf wedi digwydd oedd pobl ifanc yn gofyn i'r weithiwr ieuenctid am podcasting. Mi oedd y gweithwyr ieuenctid wedyn wedi dechrau trafodaethau mewnol a chodi'r angen. Yn ddilyn hynny, mi oedd y gweithwyr ieuenctid wedi gweithio gyda'r pobl ifanc. Oedd nhw'n gwneud gwaith ymchwil enghraifft pa offer oedd ei angen, pa sgiliau oedd nhw angen dysgu a datblygu. Fel gwasanaeth, rydym wedi gweithio gyda adran TC Cyngor Gwynedd. Rydym wedi cydweithio i dderbyn cefnogaeth ac hefyd arweiniad gan adran TC y Cyngor i alluogi ni fel gwasanaeth ffeindio ffordd i'r cais y gweithwyr a pobl ifanc digwydd. Enghraifft pa offer, sut i diogelu pawb a gweithio yn ddiogel. Ystod yr gwaith yma rydym wedi cydnabod skills gap a wedi ymestyn allan i gweithwyr ieuenctid sir arall. Rydym wedi rhannu ein anghenion a mi oedd nhw yn hapus iawn i helpu ni fel gwasanaeth. Rydym wedi derbyn hyfforddiant, dymugaid a hefyd maen nhw ar gael i cefnogi ni ar unrhyw amser. Heddiw, mae nifer o'n gweithwyr ieuenctid ni yn cydweithio gyda pobl ifanc. Maen nhw'n gweithio gyda gilydd i dysgu a datblygu sgiliau gyda gilydd. Rydym dal yn dysgu a rydym dal yn datblygu. Ein gobeithion yn y dyfodol, wel, da ni dal yn mynd i dysgu a datblygu, ond gobaith ydy bydd pobl ifanc yn arwain ac bydd nhw'n cario ymlaen gyda podcastio a'r pwnciau o ddewis iddyn nhw. A byddwn ni fel gwasanaeth yn cefnogi'r pobl ifanc lle da ni'n gallu arddangos gwaith nhw yn cyhoeddus. Mae gyda ni sampl i ddangos i chi lle oedd sut mae'r gweithwyr a'r pobl ifanc yn cydweithio gyda gilydd. Da ni'n mynd i arddangos just sampl bach o podcast. Un nesaf, Tania, diolch. Di pawb yn gallu clywed?
Croeso i hanner ffordd.
Fi yw Ewa.
Fi yw Tilly.
Fi yw Sophia.
A fi yw Molly.
Heddiw, rydym ni'n yma i trafod y cartŵn Gin Lane. Rwy'n dwi'n mynd i rhoi dipyn bach o wybodaeth am y llyn. Ydych chi'n gwybod pa amser oedd y llyn? Oes dweudwch chi ar amser Victoriaid dach chi'n iawn. Cafodd y llyn ei creu gan dyn o enw William Hogarth.
Mae hwn yn sampl o sut da ni fel gwasanaeth wedi gwrando ar pobl ifanc, wedi cydweithio gyda gwasanaethau allanol a hefyd yn mewnol fel cyngor. Da ni gyd yn dysgu a datblygu a mae'n siwrne braf o blaen ni. Diolch.
Bore da, dwi'n falch bod fi heb di gorau newid i Saesneg yn ola. Lindsay Thomas dwi a dwi'n bennaeth datblygu yn Gista. Slide nesaf, please, Tania. So mae Gista yn sydyn yn elusen sy'n darparu cefnogaeth i bobl ifanc bregus a digartra yng Ngwynedd. A fel elusen, da ni'n dilyn 5 piler gwaith ieuenctid ac yn gweithio'n holistig o amgylch person ifanc. Prosiect craidd Gista ydy digartrefedd, ond mae gennym ni amryw o brosiectau eraill yn cynnwys iechyd meddwl, rhieni ifanc, pobl ifanc LHDTC+, pobl ifanc sydd wedi cael pryfed o ofal, a mae cyfleuon yn rhan mawr o'n gwaith, a da ni yn darparu amryw gyfleuon drwy brosiectau addysgol, teithio, cyflogadwyedd, creadigol, chwaraeon a lot mwy. Mae llais pobl ifanc yn graidd i holl waith Gista, so mae hynna'n arwain fi at un esiampl dwi am sôn efo chi heddiw, sef un o brosiectau Digidol diweddar Gista. Slide nesaf, please. So mae digartrefedd yn brofiad dychrynllyd i unrhyw berson, ond dychmygwch fod yn berson ifanc 16 yn ffeindio eich hunan ddigartra heb cefnogaeth teulu ac angen mynd i fewn i hostel. Bod hosteli gista yn gyfeillgar i bobl ifanc a wedi delwra yn dilyn egwyddorion PAI, Psychologically Informed Environment, mae o'n dal yn brofiad anodd iawn. Mi oedden ni wedi derbyn adborth gan bobl ifanc o symud mewn i'r hostel yn anodd, yn achosi pryder a bod nhw ddim yn gwybod be i ddisgwyl. Ynghyd â hynny, oedden ni wedi derbyn adborth am bod angen mwy o brosiectau digidol. Felly, oedden ni wedi dod i fyny efo'r syniad a di cydgynhyrchu'r syniad o greu rhaglen VR, sef virtual reality, efo pobl ifanc. Felly, mae'r bobl ifanc wedi bod yn cydweithio efo Claire Tanner, sydd hefyd yn wirfoddolwr yn clwbiau LHDTC ni, felly oedd gennych hi berthynas efo'r bobl ifanc yn barod. I gynllunio raglen VR, virtual reality, sydd yn tywys person ifanc o amgylch y hostel. Felly, roedd y bobl ifanc sydd wedi byw yn yr hostel yn rhan o hyn, o rhan o'r trefnu ac yn rhannu profiadau nhw a senarios gwahanol pan oedden nhw wedi symud i fewn eu hunan. Felly mae'r bobl ifanc yma yn y grŵp o ryw 6 o bobl ifanc wedi cymryd rhan a wedi bod yn rhan o bob rhan o trefnu'r VR, lle o dylunio cymeriadau, i wneud dialog, i wneud floor plans, cynllunio llawr, i wneud y lleisiau, a bob un rhan o ran y sgript ac ati. Mae'r rhaglen hefyd yn cynnwys cyngor i bobl ifanc newydd, gan bobl ifanc sydd wedi bod drwyddo fo'i hunan, y geirio o anogaeth a lot mwy. Felly, da ni yn y broses o just gorffan y prosiect yma ar hyn o bryd, a fydden ni'n defnyddio hwn yn y dyfodol i pobl ifanc newydd sydd angen symud mewn i hostel, neu hefyd i bobl proffesiynol i godi ymwybyddiaeth o'r profiad mae'r bobl ifanc yn mynd drwyddo pan maen nhw'n dod at ni. Felly mae yna jyst fideo byr o'r broses ar hyn o bryd, ac yn amlwg allai ddim dangos yr VR ei hun i chi heb goggles, ond fideo o'r broses i ddilyn. Diolch, mae hwnna jyst yn snapshot really sydyn, ond mi fydd y rhaglen ar gael i bobl ifanc yn un o deimlo chydig bach fwy cyffyrddus a wneud y profiad o ddigartrefedd yn haws. Diolch.
Bore, good morning. I'm Lucy. I'm a Comms and Engagement Officer at Promo Cymru, and I'm going to be talking about 2 examples of what good youth information looks like on TikTok. Next slide, please, Tanya. And next slide again. So Promo Cymru runs a project called The Sprout, which is a blogging, information and campaigning platform for young people in Wales. And after completing a work experience placement at Promo, they gave me and another young person an opportunity for a paid role to start a TikTok account for The Sprout to see if we could reach more young people and create educational content in a fun and relatable way. And they gave us free rein to create content we wanted on issues important to us and the young people around us, and the freedom to experiment and see what happened. Next slide, please. Our content covers a lot of topics like mental health, democracy, sustainability, sex education, media literacy, and more. And when we started, there was a lot of trial and error, and our views fluctuated, but one of our experiments really paid off in our Pride Cymru More Than a Month campaign. Next slide, please. Before the campaign, we'd posted around 20 videos and they were getting 100 to 500 views. And we knew Pride Cymru was around the corner and thought it'd be a great time to experiment by creating a campaign using TikTok. We wanted to create a campaign that highlighted the thoughts, worries and experiences of the young people attending Pride Cymru. And normally we would have done this by creating blogs and posting them on our website, but this time we thought we'd try and involve TikTok. And to get started, we just got a cheap microphone, came up with some questions and created a media consent form and started filming. A colleague and I alternated interviewing people and asking questions like, what advice would you give to young LGBTQIA+ people? Why is Pride important? And did you have any LGBTQIA+ sex education in your school? And we created over 30 short videos from our interviews with young people and repurposed them for blogs and Instagram content. And from the 2 days of filming, we had so much rich information from young people, and it gave us lots of ideas on how we could create content to support their needs and reflect their opinions to the public. And once we began uploading them, our TikTok account was flooded with hundreds of thousands of views and thousands of comments, and one video in particular reached more people than we ever imagined. It currently has over 3.5 million views, and it's all about young people sharing what their flag means. If you could play the video, please, Tanya.
Your guys' flags mean, in case someone doesn't know what it means? My one that I'm wearing is the trans flag. I'm trans, female to male, and I came out 2 years ago, and this one is the pansexual flag.
So sexuality, sex, and gender identities are still wildly misunderstood by a lot of people. So we saw the potential for a few negative comments, but nothing had prepared us for the amount of engagement we would receive on TikTok. And don't get me wrong, 3.5 million views are great, but we were really unprepared for the comment section to be blowing up as well. And we spent many, many hours going through and deleting and reporting hateful comments. So now we have a comments filter set up that allows us to approve or delete any comments before they're officially posted on the account. And this experience taught us a lot and showed some of the challenges of being online, but it also showed us that there are ways to combat this. And there is so much hate and online abuse, and for the moment that's hard to stop. But if non-profits are in the space that other young people are, it gives us the opportunity to interrupt that hate and to spread a positive message. And I understand not everyone is comfortable being in front of a camera or having their face on social media, or you might not be in the position to employ young people to help develop your organization on a platform like TikTok, but there are a lot of ways to get around this, and a great example is what Make is doing. Next slide, please. And Make is a helpline service for young people and children up to the age of 25 in Wales, and it's run by Promo Cymru. Next slide, please. And they create informative videos on sexual health, advocacy, mental health, etc., all aimed at young people, and with the aim to raise awareness for the service and direct people to the helpline. And they do all of this without using a real person as the face. Instead, they use cartoon characters that represent different topics and themes. And using TikTok this way has allowed them to reach thousands of people who may not have heard of the helpline before, and raise awareness for the support they provide to young people. And this is just two ways we've used TikTok to revamp youth information. And there are a lot of other non-profits doing amazing work on the platform. So please don't be afraid to have a go or involve and employ young people to help you get started. Diolch, thank you.
So my name's Dale Luce. I work for Cardiff Youth Service. Can we head to the next slide, please? So I'm really lucky to manage a digital youth work team here in Cardiff, which is quite a unique position really in Wales. But I work with an amazing team, as you'll see on the right-hand side, which can't hear. Just looking at the chat. But yeah, I'm going to carry on. So yeah, I work with this amazing team, all of which have got skills within youth work, but also within digital youth work as well. I want to emphasize a couple of things. Digital youth work isn't just a COVID way of working. It's here to stay, and there's a bigger need now than ever for young people to access opportunities and services. There's lots of work been happening in Europe around what digital youth work is. And even though it's quite an alien thing in Wales, it's a common practice within countries like Finland. Another thing I just want to emphasize as well, it is about that proactive use of digital media and technology. And that is one of the key principles of good digital youth work. I'm going to present two examples of how we've done this through a content creation project that involves a weekly youth club for young people, and of late is involved in international partnership with the States, and also a virtual youth club that has been co-produced with young people. And we've been live for roughly about 2 years and has had 284 young people sign up. And it's run on a platform called Discord. Can I just have a quick show in the chat if you've heard about Discord? Just a quick yes or no. Cool, mostly yes, a little, okay, interesting. So that's all I'm going to say. We've got two videos to hear from some of the staff and the young people about those two projects. Also happy to speak about them at a further date and ask some questions later on in the session. Play the movie.
We had the young people from all the backgrounds, so those young people, they feel themselves represented. I think we give them the freedom of expression, So we had a lot of young people who had lack of confidence. At the end of the project, we could see like completely different young people.
To be given like complete freedom in a creative environment in a safe way is so important for young people to develop a passion in it, you know. I would say that was a really good opportunity for young people to engage with something new that they hadn't experienced before.
It improved my digital skills a lot because we had Americans come over. They knew a lot more than we knew at the time, and they taught us really well. We learned tons of new things.
But it was more than just digital skills. It was social skills and it was like networking skills. We wouldn't have been in that position without Cardiff content creators.
We are the Cardiff Youth Service Discord server, basically an online youth club that exists on the social media app Discord. With this server, we've been able to take youth work to young people. So the young people that perhaps weren't leaving the house, they wouldn't walk into a youth club, we've been able to go to them. To be honest, a lot of these young people have never engaged with youth work before and probably wouldn't have if it wasn't for the server.
My anxiety gets like very overwhelmed very easily, so having it on my phone, it doesn't make me anxious and it's very easy to communicate. So being in that group is like a little like friend group that I've now got.
I think it's given me a bit more of just a confidence of going out and being more social. Being able to meet all these new people has been incredible for me, as I don't leave the house a lot, and just gives us all kind of like a sense of like belonging.
I just wanted to add, one of the girls who've seen on the second video is actually an apprentice within the youth service now, which is yeah, really cool. So yeah, that clear progression from being involved in digital projects to now being part of our service.
Bore da, everyone. I'm head of social action with Promo Cymru, and I manage the Mike helpline. So Lucy very kindly did an introduction earlier, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I think I just wanted to sort of like highlight, before going on to my next slide, a couple of key headline figures, and to kind of stress the point that I would hope that most people will be familiar with Mike, breaking rule number 1 of good communication and making a massive assumption here, but that we are perhaps more of a model in relation to the combination and interrelationship between information, digital, entitlement. So I'm not going to focus on any one particular thing. So we're not a specific tool or platform. So the reason for Mike's success as well, just to quickly highlight, is the importance of the working relationship and collaboration between the social action team, which answers the contacts, and the comms and engagement team, which Lucy gave you a little little preview into in relation specifically to TikTok. So as a result of that, our digital presence and reach and engagement actually reaches in the hundreds of thousands. The website landing page gets in the regions of tens of thousands every year, and then that translates into, although direction of travel into the helpline reaches about 4,000 to 5,000 contacts a year. Next slide. So key messages, just in relation to using this website homepage as just a brief explanation of one of the key messages about Mike, which is about the reach with regards to information through digital. So if and when you land on the website, but the website is just one platform or tool to reach us, you will see that there's lots of go-tos on the landing page. So whether you know what you're looking for, whether you just want to browse because you're curious or you're not sure of what you're looking for, this homepage will provide a really good sort of like introduction, because it enables you to access blog content, video material, as well as the direct contact information that will take you straight through to telephone, mobile, text, instant message. Can't see the instant message on there at the moment, but that will also show whether a Welsh language speaker is available. The website page here is obviously a screenshot, not live, and is the Welsh language. So everything we produce is bilingual and available in both English and Welsh. If you go to the next page, just very quickly. This is a pen picture. I'll read it out loud. And this is again just to give an illustration of how it all kind of like comes together and to give some idea of what the actual helpline advisor advocates do. That's often a question that we get asked. So Julie, 22, contacted us via instant message at 10 o'clock on a weeknight. After having seen one of our videos about consent, she was sad and conflicted. She was struggling in her relationship with her partner. This was the first time she'd spoken to anyone about an incident she'd experienced in the past and which was continuing to impact on her. So what we eventually did, we helped her make contact with a service specializing in sexual violence and trauma, providing a bridging service. So what this doesn't show is the 30 to 45 minutes worth of exchange in terms of instant message script, toing and froing between Julie and between an advisor. So clearly there's a lot that goes on in that conversation. And very importantly, it's the skills and expertise of the team that enables to get at what matters most to individuals. Interestingly as well, then what this does show is that the individual Julie came to us having seen a video. So very often we know that people will go to our web page or through our social media to all the resources and content because they are curious, they're testing us out before they making a decision to actually seek help for something that's troubling and bothering them. So this basically highlights kind of that interrelationship, the layering of information through to signposting, to referral, to bridging, to actual intervention with the individual when they present to us. So a lot of stuff in there about building trust, relationship, offering options, exploring what they need, what they want, and making sure that as a result of the contact with us, however brief, there is a constructive and positive outcome that helps address whatever they've come to us with. So that's very much Mike in a nutshell. Happy to answer questions, and clearly lots of information available outside of this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have a Q&A with panel members now. So if you have a question, if you could indicate it in the either put your hand up or indicate it in the chat. Oh, there we are. We've got Catrin, I think. Isn't it?
Hi, Lefywyd. Diolch yn fawr iawn, a diolch yn fawr iawn am y cyflwyniadau. O'n I jyst yn moyn cael syniad a beth oedd y llinell amser blaenoraethau y gwaith digidol, ble mae'r entitlement card yn eistedd gyda phob dim arall, achos mae'n edrych fod yr entitlement card yn darn enfawr o waith.
Yeah, maybe if I answer that. So we provided 2 bits of work around the information and the background in terms of the entitlements to the Welsh Government to be taken forward to the Minister. So that's where we are at the moment, because in a sense, these goes to the Minister. The Minister has to make decisions on whether they want to take them forward. And we need to look at digital now as well. So in a sense, part of the timeline is how that progresses through Welsh Government and through the Minister. That's why I call it the implementation, and it is something we'd like to progress, but that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah.
Just if I could just take with us a Deb Austin there about how we can draw cross-sex approach to digital offers. I know that's the area you're looking at, Deb, and I think for me is that it's quite interesting when I come across most other sectors, they talk about how do they interact with young people? How can they do this? You know, how does housing do it? How does health do it? And I think youth work sector is very able to do that. And you could see it very clearly in information. So how do we pass information to young people? I know that those sectors are constantly trying to provide information to young people. I mean, you could even look at it in terms of the approach where Dale has a Discord. He has a group of 300 young people that could be contacted and be sent information. So I think it's that kind of crucial interface between services and the work we do to access young people. I think that's the interface. So I'm going to take one more question, I think, and I'll ask others to answer because I think it's wider. So are we ready for what comes next in digital? If not,
I'm happy to touch on that a bit. To be honest, I think nationally not. I think it's really good we've got like an IPG that's linked to obviously this agenda. But I think there probably needs to be like a network of practitioners coming together on a regular basis to offer support, examples, and support each other to what's here now, but what's around the corner. And I believe with a network of people, that process becomes a little bit easier and much more supportive.
Okay, anybody else from the panel like to say something?
I would just add that I think we've had discussions within the implementation boards as well about training for youth staff. I think that's an important aspect of getting digital standard across all sectors, is that youth workers need to be trained, and that's something that some of the IPGs are also looking at. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then Tim Opie's asking a question about any thought being put into bringing together leaders, and yes, the thought has been put into it. I, personally, as the chair of the group, I'm looking for support from I suppose Welsh Government really to be able to help us do that, because otherwise, in reality, there's a number of people here who spend a lot of time in these IPGs, but it's very hard to do the wider work really. That it takes up time. I know we're talking about using service design to involve young people, to involve the sector into thinking through what could come next and how we do that. But it is a process that needs to be run through, and it's not something. It's not. It's a process that involves more just talking about things. You have to think about why, how, and what, and why are we doing these things? What works well, what doesn't. Which is something that does take resources and thought and time, because I ask of people come here as volunteers, they're doing what they can in this space, but at the same time they've got work they're trying to do in their youth work settings. Okay, I'm gonna I think we're gonna move on now. We can take those questions, and please contact any of us directly or the group, send messages to the group, and we'll definitely do that. We'd like your your wider input into the whole not debate, because I always bring it back to the implementation group. I try and bring it back to it's an implementation group, not a discussion group. We're here to try to work to implement these measures. And I think we can drift, if we don't, we drift back off into some sort of other debate, and it's important. So are we ready to start splitting off into the breakout rooms? You will go into a breakout room and you'll have someone to support you in the breakout rooms to fill in the jam boards. I think the people you will interact with you will explain what to do. We're going to have 25 minutes. So it's your kind of the things to be able to put in there, because again, we'd only explore, you can't do everything in this kind of time. So we just want your feedback, and we can collect more information afterwards, and we'll be looking at each section. So it's I'll leave it to the workshop coordinators to look after those areas. We're going to move straight into the feedback. The first one is from Lindsay.
Ia, na i drio fod yn sydyn, ond fel oedden ni'n mynd trwy'r sgwrs, oedden ni'n sylweddoli bod y 3 peth yn plethu, a so dyna da ni wedi weld fel grŵp hefyd. O ran gwybodaeth, dwi'n meddwl lot yn sôn am cyfryngau cymdeithasol, lot yn sôn am pwysigrwydd o gwaith 1 gwybodaeth priodol ar adeg cywir, sicrhau bod ni'n darparu hynna, a weithiau bod hynna'n anodd i weithwyr i ddeall eu hunan beth sydd ar gael. Pethau fel WhatsApp, Google Classrooms, mae yr urdd efo rhywbeth o'r enw Porth sydd fel gwefan i rannu gwybodaeth am pobl ifanc penodol sydd yn swnio'n gret. O ran datblygu'n bellach, just mwy o berchnogaeth gen bobl ifanc, bod nhw'n perchnogi'r gwybodaeth, lle i fynd, oeddwn ni troi chydig bach fwy i beth sydd angen cael ei wneud, lle oedd lot o sôn bod meic yn ffordd dda cael gwybodaeth, a ia, so chi'n symud ymlaen i nesaf, Tania, diolch. A wedyn, o ran digidol, nath lot oedden ni wedi sôn am cynt, lle eto cyfryngau, disgod, podcast i gynnal lleisio bobl ifanc, bod wyneb o wyneb dal yn bwysig, ond bod ni angen fath model hybrid, bod yna beth yn digidol ar gael. Eto sôn am gwefan Porth yr Urdd, astudiaethau achos, fideos a lleisio yn bwerus, bod digidol yn sgôp i gyrraedd cynulleidfa gwahanol, ond bod angen sicrhau bod ni'n darparu tabledi a laptops a ffurfio bobl ifanc gallu fod yn digidol. Nesaf, please, Tania. A wedyn, gafon ni sgwrs am hir amdan y cynnig a dwi'n meddwl y sgôp o'r potensial o hwn yn gallu fod yn enfawr i gynnwys gwybodaeth a digidol hefyd, ond bod llywodraeth angen ymrwymo yn tymor hir, ond hefyd angen meysydd wahanol i ymrwymo fel y trafnidiaeth am ddim, iechyd, bod na proof of age am ddim yna fo, bod o, efallai bod na ffordd o gael hanes yr unigolyn i hylwyso cefnogaeth, ffordd o lleisio barn, bod hwnna'n bwysig drwyddo fo, bod yna wybodaeth hefyd ar gael ar y cardyn, so fath o directory yn helpu'r elfen gwybodaeth. Un peth oedden ni'n meddwl yn diddorol oedd yr mynediad i llyfrgelloedd, bod pobl ifanc ddim yn gwybod beth sydd ar gael yn llyfrgelloedd nhw, a fysa yr cardyn yn gallu cynnwys cardyn llyfrgell, yn lle bod nhw'n gorfod mynd trwy i registro eto ar gyfer llyfrgelloedd, bod y cardyn yma yn rhoi mynediad iddyn nhw i wahanol bethau. A hefyd, jyst i orffan, dwi'n meddwl, y pwysigrwydd o bod o ar gael trwy cerdyn, app a gwefan efallai, jyst bod o ar gael mewn wahanol ffyrdd i bobl ifanc. Ia, a dwi'n meddwl, a sgôp hefyd i bod yna hyfforddiant bobl ifanc arno fo, links i wahanol wybodaeth, a fatha to-do guides ar sut i wneud pethau fel set i fyny banc a felly. So, dwi'n meddwl ia, i ddod i orffan oedd bod yna gymaint o sgôp efo hwn, ond bod angen pawb i bod yn rhan ohono fo. Sori, gobeithio bod fi wedi cyfro bod ddim. Diolch.
Thank you, Lindsay. We'll move over to Nia.
Hi, similarities, I'll try and be very quick. So the information is currently what's on, how to access provision, young people's rights. The information was very similar to what Lindsay has raised. It can be developed through virtual VR, Snapchat, and developing our skills through social media. So very similar to Lindsay's slide. Thank you, Tanya. Digital youth work is using things like Lindsay has already mentioned, and it's using like VR, podcasting, using apps such as Discourse. A wealth of ways that digital youth work can be delivered, and similarities again to what Lindsay was saying. Many young people do not have access to either devices, so digital poverty does come into it, and also rural areas can be quite difficult with networks, but very similar again. Another area for development is the sharing of good practice and supporting each other as youth workers in the youth profession of good practice. There is ideas on a Wales-wide brand and a central digital that is access for all. Thank you, Tanya. And very similar again in the entitlement card, access to library services. One of the ideas was where young people can upload their certificates where they have a passport for their continuous pathway of progress and development, and again similar pathways to employment. It's proof of age, free transport, free training, but very much similarities to what Lindsay's already mentioned. Diolch.
Okay, and we move over to Dale.
Yeah, so on the first one, we talked about the information being relevant to young people about issues that impact them, and it being done in a youth work approach through events, activities in youth clubs, through conversations and social media. We talked about development going further would be around use of digital platforms. However, whichever organisation you work in, there's often sort of challenges you're up against and constraints, and that can, not an easy process to sort of navigate. Yeah, we talked about digital youth work offers. We started to talk again about virtual reality. We talked about what an offer on a digital youth club might look like, very much around that sort of cash curriculum in a youth work approach. And in terms of some of the developments going further would be what funding is available, is always going to look really different in each organisation, each different local authority. So what support is in place? There's often maybe looking at clear guidance to support places, or it could be a little bit further where there's actually a need to develop something specific in each area, and that's sort of driven potentially by Welsh Government. We talked about how hybrid approaches to digital youth work is a good example. Next slide. We talked about free travel, and very much the same as what other people have been talking about. But we did have discussions as well as where do we actually go next with the entitlement offer? What is the digital IPG's role within this? How is it going to be driven forward? And I sort of made that reflection is I've learned quite quickly that this is a massive piece of work. It's not going to happen overnight. So it's about how we continue to speak, develop, include the sector in these conversations and developments. Also spoke about the role of Erica and how Wales have already got sort of support network there. And thank you for Ariel for sharing the podcast links. Definitely some useful information there if you want to check that out.
Okay, and now we're moving to Rachel, I think. Yeah, Rachel.
Hello. Yeah, we had a really interesting group, lots of interesting conversations here, much of which has been covered earlier on. Something that's come up there is about new and emerging tech like VR and AI, and where does that fit in with the youth information, and how to develop youth information. A lot of thoughts around co-production, co-design, a network of digital platforms there, and youth workers working together to support young people to do that. Yeah, so I think that was the main ones that were added to what was previously been said. Then around digital youth work, again, that it should be visual and people should be having fun when they're doing that. But there was also thoughts around having, which was on the previous one as well, about having more play-based training for young people as opposed to lecture-based and text-based. But there definitely would be a need to develop around training, time and money for training, and making sure that that was there. And what was also very key was that we consult with young people about what they want that to look like. So that it's not done to them. Can we move on, please? Thank you. And then around the entitlement card, lots of thoughts around this that have been previously mentioned. Some of it was around having emergency contact details there, having access to other records there so that young people could be supported, maybe health records, etc. Having a QR code on there, and definitely having some information on there about services that would help young people so they could access that straight away. For example, Make, yes, travel was there, but also looking at young Scott and the ACRE card so that we could have a model there for developing what we already have. But yeah, really interesting group. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's over to me. So number one, I've posted, see that map there. Hopefully you can see the map. The map there is a map of Catalonia, the Catalan region of Spain. So that's where Barcelona is. And that's a population of twice the size of Wales, probably twice the size young people. All those orange dots are youth information centres across Catalonia. So physically, they have a lot of presence in Catalonia. they lack one thing, is they're not really digitally enabled that well, although they are starting to work that way. But in a sense, I've always been looking at this and thinking, you know, how can we help to create this sort of situation a bit more in Wales? And one thing is not by reinventing, but we do have youth centres across Wales, both statutory and voluntary. And wouldn't it be great if they were kind of linked into some way of young people knowing that they can access them physically to get face-to-face information, and they were supported by a digital offer that brought all those centres together and brought the information into one approach, so both young people and workers could get the information they wanted. So yeah, so we talked about various things. Some of it's already been talked about: developing the social media, chat API, need for national coordinated approach, because I think there's a lot of great work being carried out, but very little that is pulling things together. If we go on to the next one. This one's about what does digital, and so we want to do a whole range of areas there to be able to kind of keep that developing. A lot have been spoken about, so I'm not going to go through individual areas. And I think the main thing of digital is to keep thinking about young people in the approach and not just the tool. So keeping that as a important part. And the next one. So the entitlement offer. There's a couple of things came up in there, and one was like the need for identification for a young person to vote. That's now a requirement, and I think one person had been on the polling station and recognizing that they really felt like I think they said 90% of the people came with bus passes. Bus passes you get when you're 60 plus, I think. So it shows how many people are voting, how many young people are not voting now because they don't have identification easily. I work with the Money and Pension Service. Young people struggle with opening bank accounts. If they had an entitlement card that had a proof of age on it as well, they could open bank accounts, and a whole host of other services that they may be able to access. And the whole digital, there was comment around rural access to services, and that that we're not looking at a competition between face-to-face and digital. It's actually the pathways from one thing to another. Example for me is I don't want to go to the bank for every single thing I do. I want to go to the bank when I need a bank. So I do want access physically, but I don't want to go there for little things. I think that would be the same for most people. Okay, that's end of that one. I think we've come in towards the closing. Now we've gone 1 minute over. I'm gonna bring it to a close, really. I think, please, I'm very happy to have stuff sent to me directly. Any other questions or comments? I think we need to be better at passing the information across to other people as well. And we look forward to your support going forward and carrying on this approach. Really, I think personally, I think there is no way back. We're in a digital world, and the digital world is not going to go away. It's not going to go away, and we really owe it to young people to help them to be part of that, be digital citizens, to be citizens of the world. And without these tools, we're going to miss a lot of things, and helping everybody to do that. So I'd like to just leave it on that, and thank you very much, everybody, for your time.